I think they're 10, 20 years ahead of us, maybe even more, not because of they're a couple months ahead or behind on DeepSeek or ChatGPT, but because of uplifting the entire cities here. And this is, this is what digital China is.
大家好，今天和大家分享一段难得的海外学者访谈实录。这位美国教授和中国结缘数十年，早在1979年就第一次来到中国，亲眼见证深圳从小渔村一步步发展起来。近年他专程来华，先后走访武汉、深圳、杭州多地，深入工厂车间、高校实验室实地调研。没有只依赖西方媒体的二手消息和欧美媒体习惯单独聚焦某家企业、某款 AI 模型不同，他跳出碎片化的观察视角，看清了中国城市产业、人才数字化政务联动的完整发展体系。他直言，华尔街日报、纽约时报等媒体呈现的内容只占到中国发展全貌的1/10。西方如同用吸管看世界，很难看清整体布局。他实地走访后认为，中国在全域数字化建设层面领先欧美10年以上。接下来，我们一起来看他亲身走访后的真实见闻与思考。
So let's talk China. So you went to China last year. I think last year June.
During the bombing of Fordo, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
During the bombing of Fordo, you're there for 2 weeks, 18 hours a day.
Yeah.
And you're in the factories, you're in places. What did you learn about where China's at that the rest of the world is not aware of?
Yeah, what I learned is we're tracking about, I would say, from the newspapers, that is Wall Street Journal, New York Times, even the business side, probably about 10% of the real big picture of what's happening in China. What we are doing is taking a soda straw view of what's happening, focusing on individual companies. And I know because when I went, I wanted to visit the companies, BYD, Xiaomi, which is another electric vehicle manufacturer. It's like the Porsche level. And also Alibaba, also some laser advanced AI in Wuhan. And I wanted to go visit the companies because that's what I thought I should do. I wanted to see, and I did. I visited the companies on the shop floor. I got a chance to see how the robots actually work. For hours, not just for a few minutes. And I did learn some things, Beijing and Shanghai, which many people will do all the time here, but by going to Wuhan, Hangzhou, Shenzhen, to actually go on the shop floor, spend hours and hours and hours there, then go to dinner with the executives to really talk about the situation here, also in the Middle East. I learned something really big, Patrick, which is what China's doing is not just simply uplifting a company. They are doing that. They're uplifting whole cities. So think not about an AI company in Pittsburgh. Think Pittsburgh itself is being uplifted. So what I saw was, say, I'll just pick Wuhan because Wuhan is an old steel city like Pittsburgh is. Now it's 9 million. Pittsburgh's about 350,000, so it's bigger. But what they did in Wuhan was they are uplifting all of the medical industry. They are uplifting all of the city's transit infrastructure with AI. I don't just mean redoing paving the potholes here. They are uplifting, when you go to get your driver's license in these cities that I'm in, they have rebuilt the entire buildings where it's not that they just accommodate your cell phone. It's like, start cell phone, build building around the idea of a cell phone. Okay, this is a completely different experience where you go into the building to get either you want a building permit or you want your driver's license here. You're going in, and the very first thing you do is you have to tap your phone so that you get everything downloaded on your phone, because there's an awful lot of forms you need to fill out. And you might try to do this at home, but they explained to me, yes, but when we try to do that, we need to have people standing on the side so that there's always going to be a question here or there that you're going to have. And so then what do you have? You don't have these long lines. The university, not city of Chicago motor vehicle. Oh my goodness gracious! Just imagine if those of you could just imagine. It's worse than you imagine. Okay, but what happens in these advanced cities now is they have the equivalent of Starbucks right there. They have little areas for the kids to play, because what the parents have to do, the adults have to come in, is they got to go and work on their cell phone to fill out all these forms. And then they will have about 10% contact with humans. And then then one of the big fears we have here about AI is it's going to put everybody, it's going to make everybody unemployed. That's not what's happening in Wuhan and Shenzhen and Hangzhou. You're having massive construction, because what you're doing is you're feeding AI in at every single street corner. When you get this will probably happen to us very soon. When you get a speeding ticket, now you know how we have the red lights here. Okay,
They take the pictures.
They take the picture, and we get about 2 weeks later here, and you don't know that it happened for 2 weeks. Okay. What happens in China, and they showed me, literally the driver showed me this, is when you run that speeding ticket, you get it in 2 seconds.
Stop it.
And they take it right out. No, and you could just push pay now.
That
okay. And then the other thing that I really was just knocked me off my socks was the integration with university systems. So now, of course, I'm a professor and I'm interested in doing that. And as I'm doing this tour, they want to hear my talks on, say, Trump foreign policy and tariffs, things like that. So that's natural. I would also go to the university. But when I go to the universities, I'm getting these deep presentations, not just me talking to them, about how they're integrating with the AI, because you've got basically AI that doesn't need a BA. You've got AI that needs a BA, AI that needs a master's, and AI that needs PhDs. And then they started to take me these different firms. So a lot of the firms are what's called vertically integrated, where what they're doing is building their own silicon chips. So they took me to the chip factories. So this would be a chip factory. I went in, say, Wuhan, which is part of a AI laser company. So they have the AI lasers here that are doing all this special carving with lasers and AI, but then they do their own chips. So they took me to the chips, where you've got to get all dressed in the suits because you can't have any spotty, any dirt that gets in. And then they started to explain to me that, and they showed me that what's really happening here is you can't do this with BAs. You've got to actually have masters, and some of the chip assemblies here need to be done with PhDs, because it's really very technical and very specific. It's not just people turning widgets or screwdrivers. And I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania, and I've seen Erie, Pennsylvania, just kind of the bottom fall out since over the last 30, 40 years. It breaks my heart. I mean, we basically have we used to have all these industries, and we had paper industries, all these tool and die industries here. You know what the big industries in Erie, Pennsylvania are? Hospitals where you're born, and funeral parlors where you die. Okay, and this just breaks my heart here. And we just don't have any real approach like this. But what China's doing is they're not just uplifting a DeepSeek or an Alibaba. They are creating webs of doing that. But 90% of this is happening in a much broader context, where they're taking, say, a St. Louis, and they're uplifting the whole area. They're taking a Pittsburgh, they're uplifting the whole city. They're taking Detroit, and they're uplifting the whole city. And I went in that 2-week period, I went to these four areas. It's about 50 million people that are being uplifted. Now, maybe they haven't uplifted anybody else. I don't know. I didn't actually. They're telling me that if I went to the more rural areas, I'd be impressed there too, and maybe I will go back. But the bottom line is, let's assume it's only 50 million people. Only 50 million people, and we're going to look down on that? No, I think they're 10, 20 years ahead of us, maybe even more. Not because of they're a couple months ahead or behind on DeepSeek or ChatGPT, but because of uplifting the entire cities here. And this is, what digital China is uplifting this whole area. And quite a few of these business owners, when I had dinners with them here, they would tell me their personal story, just like when we started out here. And almost, many of them had a very similar story, which was, well, in the 1980s or 90s, I lived in rural areas and I didn't even have shoes. And now, look at me. Okay, so this could be America.
Well, this is America. They kind of duplicated us. Without us,
Well,
China
but
wouldn't
where
be
are
what it's
we?
at today.
Where are we right now? You see, I believe
we are
in
the juggernaut. We are the greatest country in the world that everybody copies and duplicates and steals
then
from.
let's get juggernauting. Okay,
Yeah.
so I am definitely I'm not going to become a salesman or sort of supporter of China. Now, with the other thing I want to say to your audience is, right now they're probably going to go and start to Google. Oh, okay, Professor Pape is saying all this stuff. I'm going to go see for myself. You can't see it on Google. And the reason is because they won't let
what
the
they're
picture.
doing in China is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
advancement.
I mean, the actual shop floor,
Right.
just like you go in the West Wing, they take the cell phone. Okay, they don't want. They could easily be talking smack and bragging and showing all this off. They're just not doing that, and that tells me we're up against not just a competitor, but we're up against somebody who wants to keep going under the radar. My first trip to China was 1979. 79. I was a first-year undergrad at the University of Pittsburgh. I heard about a trip that 30 of our professors were going on to study the economic industries in China. A couple graduate students were going, and I said, well, are there any undergrads going? Oh, no. So I wrote a letter to the chancellor. His name was Wesley Posvar, and 2-page letter. Brilliant idea. You're going to be the first university trip ever. Too bad you don't have an undergrad going. I got a free trip to China. Okay. So I always tell that story to my students. So just write those letters. What do you got to lose? Okay. And so I get a 5-week trip. This was not a short thing.
Wow.
5 weeks.
79.
1979. And what we did is we went, started in Hong Kong. We went to it's called Canton. That's not the Chinese name, but that's the Americanization of it. And then we basically went to multiple cities, just like I did here. And my presentation shows I have the before and after here. And Shenzhen is like unbelievable. It was just a little fishing village. Back then, and what we did is with these 30 economists, I was there with them. In the morning, we'd tour the shop floor. In the afternoon, we'd spend time with all the leaders, hearing all the stats and so forth that they wanted to collect, because they wanted to know, could China change? Could China? That was the big issue here at the time. Well, I started to go back in 2012. Now, 2012, this is after the Olympics. You're talking about they don't show you the best. Well, this was during the air
This is after the Olympics.
This is
they
after
crushed the Olympics.
Well, they did, but
Yeah.
this was during the air apocalypse, which your listeners can also look up. So the air apocalypse was the worst atmospheric pollution that we have had in any urban area, probably here in about 100 years. That we used to have this in say, London here, long time ago in the 19th century, where there was so much soot in the air from all of the chimneys that were churning out all this coal-driven energy here. It was literally pitch black at noon. So when you're in Beijing, you have to wear an N95 mask. This was before COVID. That's the first time I wore an N95, and I still went, even though maybe I shouldn't have, but I still went because I wanted to see what it was really like, and I wore the N95 here. So I saw some, and I used to call it, you said that China had the one-child policy. I called the air apocalypse the one-parent policy. Because I said, what's really half joking, only half. I said, China's doesn't want to have Japan's problem. Too many old people. How do you do that? You have a lot of pollution.
Wow.
But now what's happened in the last 10 years is they've gone huge into solar, as most people know. Well, what does that mean? Far less pollution. Far less pollution. Here, and you know that because you go to the cities and they literally don't have like the air apocalypse. I was there. I physically was there, where when you take off from Beijing, the airport in Beijing at noon, and it's totally pitch black. Once you're at 15,000 feet, the sun. Okay, this is real problems. Big problems, not just poverty. And so I saw it, but I also see China, they're cleaning things up. And we got to get moving here, Patrick. We got to stop talking we're going to get moving and just deciding that certain billionaires were going to fund their companies or help their companies get ahead. What is happening here is change is occurring in China. And the other thing I learned is that very few people from America have gone to China since COVID. So before, in the last, the University of Chicago, we opened our Beijing Center about now almost 20 years ago, 18 years ago. We have a Hong Kong Center. It was really the thing to do, the fad, if you were in universities around the Olympics. The Olympics started all the universities, Stanford, et cetera, open these centers in China, a lot of them in Beijing. Well, what happened with COVID, and there's also, we're mad at China because of COVID, I understand, but people stopped going.
看完这段访谈，说实话，最让我感慨的不是这位教授说了多少赞美中国的话，而是他描述中国的方式。他用了城市升级这个词，他不是说某个产品好，不是说某项技术牛，他说的是整个城市在升级，去医院、去办驾照、去申请建筑许可，全都通过手机完成。超速罚单2秒钟收到，点一下就能支付。政府大楼里的布局是围绕手机端这个概念来设计的。你仔细想想，这意味着什么？意味着不只是安装了一个 App， 而是把整座城市的基础设施、公共服务、交通系统、支付体系全部重构了一遍。美国教还在为 DMV 排长队发愁的时候，中国的城市已经在提供另一种体验。这位教授在访谈里做了一个非常有意思的对比，他说，匹兹堡大约35万人，武汉有900万人，这不是简单的谁大谁小，而是规模本身就带来了完全不同的逻辑。匹兹堡可能一家人工智能公司很厉害，但武汉在做的是用人工智能升级整个城市的交通基础设施、医疗产业、公共服务系统。这就是他反复强调的那个区别。看一家公司，你看到的是竞争，是输赢；看一座城市，你看到的是体系，是运作方式。他还提到了一件事，让我印象很深。他说，美国的媒体，包括《华尔街日报》、《纽约时报》报道的中国内容，可能连真实图景的10%都不到。他们做的是用一根吸管在看中国，盯着个别公司、个别事件、个别问题，可真正的大图景是那些被忽略的部分。工厂车间和大学实验室怎么连接？芯片研发和城市应用怎么衔接？人才链、技术链、供应链怎么一起往上走？这位教授讲了一段自己的经历，我觉得非常能说明问题。他在武汉参观了一家芯片工厂，必须穿全套防护服进去，不能有任何微尘。那里的工作人员向他解释，有些芯片组装工作本科学历的人做不了，需要硕士，甚至需要博士。这不是拧螺丝的活，这是极其专业、极其精密的制造。这段话直接打掉了一个老印象。很多人还以为中国制造靠的是便宜劳动力，靠的是拧螺丝，但他看到的不是低端制造，而是大学、AI、芯片工厂、企业研发之间的连接。中国制造的升级不是把旧工厂换几台机器那么简单，而是研发、制造、应用和市场之间的距离越来越短，这才是美国最不舒服的地方。美国有顶尖大学，有顶尖实验室，有最强资本市场，但很多东西断在中间，论文是一层，企业是一层，制造是一层，城市应用又是另一层。中国的优势不是每一层都完美，而是这些层之间咬合得越来越紧。这位教授还讲了一个故事，他是匹兹堡大学的本科生，听说30位教授要去中国考察，就问有没有本科生参加，回答是没有。于是他给校长写了一封2页的信，说这是大学有史以来第一次出访中国，可惜没有一个本科生参加。结果他获得了一次免费去中国的机会，整整5周的行程，1979年。所以他说他见过深圳还是小渔村时的样子，也见过空气末日时北京中午一片漆黑，必须戴 N95 口罩的样子。2012年之后，他又多次重返中国，这是一个跨度40多年的观察者，而不是第一次去的游客。所以当这样一个人说中国变化很大的时候，这个判断不是旅游博主的兴奋滤镜，他也很坦率地讲了中国的污染问题。 他说，空气末日时期，北京机场中午起飞时，外面完全是黑的，直到飞机爬到15000英尺才能看到太阳。他甚至半开玩笑地说，他把那场空气灾难叫做独子政策，意思是污染太严重，老人活不了那么久。但他接着话锋一转，过去10年发生了什么？中国大力发展太阳能，污染少多了，现在再去那些城市已经看不到空气末日了，他是亲眼见过的。所以他不是不知道问题，他只是看到了问题在被解决。这位教授说了一句话，我觉得值得每个人想一下。他说，中国的企业主在和他共进晚餐时，很多人讲了一个几乎一样的故事。80年代或90年代，我住在农村，连鞋子都没得穿，而今天你看看我。他说，这可以是美国。这句话其实在问一个很扎心的问题，美国曾经也给过普通人这样的上升通道，曾经也让人相信只要努力就能改变命运。可今天这种故事在美国还能讲多少？他在访谈里还提到了一个细节，他去了那么多工厂、实验室、芯片车间，但很多地方是不允许拍照、不允许录像的。他说他们本来完全可以大肆炫耀，但他们没有。这让他意识到，美国面对的不仅是一个竞争对手，而是一个想要守口如瓶的人。这也解释了为什么世界上很多人不相信中国已经走到这一步。你在谷歌上搜索，看到的不是这些工厂车间的实况，真正的变化发生在汽车里、工厂里、大学实验室里、城市运行的现场。而这些恰恰是西方主流叙事里缺失的那一层。很多人聊中国，聊的是新闻里的冲突、报告里的风险、短视频里的奇观，但很少有人真正进入产业现场，去看这些东西是怎么连起来的。这位教授用自己40多年的观察，提供了一个真实的角度，他不是在替谁宣传，他只是把他看到的说了出来。美国对中国的认知已经滞后了，中国不是没有问题，过去有污染、有贫困、有发展不均衡，现在也还有各种压力。但关键在于，中国很多问题不是被粉饰掉了，而是在被解决、被改造，被压缩时间去处理。污染问题用新能源和产业升级去压，老工业城市用新产业去接，公共服务用数字化去改。西方最难接受的地方就在这里，他们习惯把中国看成一个需要被教育、被管理、被纠正的对象。可现实是，中国在很多领域已经开始提供另一套答案。这个答案不一定适合所有国家照抄，但它足够让美国感到不舒服。好了，这期视频就到这里了。如果您觉得做得不错，谢谢您动动手指订阅本频道。如果您有更多想法或建议，也可以在评论区告诉我，我都会认真阅读。下期见。